Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome to your important course TEFL. How are you students? How is weather today? Is it hot or is it cold? Spring? Okay, alright. So students, I hope you have revised the last 4 lectures. Why I say 4 lectures? Because we spent 4 lectures on very important topic, that is micro teaching. So again, over there you were student teacher, right? And I'm sure those of you who are teaching, you have started teaching in the light of those 4 lectures. So again, these 4 lectures were more specific for the teaching language, and it does not mean that other lectures were not relevant. Those lectures are also important. You see, the very first lecture we talked about the role of a teacher, and then we talked about lesson planning, a very important part, right? And then we talked about stages of language teaching in an oral lesson. So we had a detailed discussion on all these stages, that is presentation stage, practice stage, production stage, and also on the warm-up stage. And then of course we talked about lesson plans, we talked about different topics, right? And you learned practically how to teach language. And then you see what we did, that we started talking of this important area, that is micro teaching, right? And of course in the organizations, in the universities, they give more time to this area, micro teaching. So here we have a different system. So we try to spend more time on this area, so that you would listen more, you would concentrate more, and you would try to exercise, to practice all these things, you see, once you start teaching English as a foreign language. So today, of course, our lecture is on integrating skills in the language classroom. So very simple, that you know 4 skills, but here we see how to integrate skills, right? Definitely when we teach, of course, at times you see, you cannot teach only one skill, right? So you have to integrate it with other skills, reading, writing, speaking, right? So what do we call it? We call it integration of skills. So today our lecture is on what? Integration of skills, right? And as usual, what to do? Let's review the last lecture that was on micro teaching, right? What is micro teaching? Of course, a process in which, of course, we teach, right, a small number of group, and we teach only a skill, right? And we teach for 5 minutes, for 7 minutes, right? So that is a micro teaching. Why we need micro teaching? Because this is a process in which we become of course teacher, and we teach a skill, right? And when we teach, there is a supervisor who supervises us, right? So he in fact observes our teaching. How do we teach? So in the light of his observation, we also improve. Once we get the feedback, what we do? We improve. We sharpen our skills, right? And we try to eliminate our errors, our weaknesses, right? Because you see, language teaching is a difficult job, right? You cannot be a language teacher unless you have a training. So it's a training for you people, that you are going to be future language teachers. So you need to know how to teach language, right? How to begin teaching, right? How to have different stages of language teaching, how to make lesson plan, right? So once you have this micro teaching, you do all those things in the backhand. You prepare a lesson for teaching, in fact, right? You learn classroom management. You learn how to deal with the behavior of students. You learn how to make groups. You learn how to have role plays, how to have discourse chains, right? So this is full-fledged training, a mock teaching we call it. So you learn so many things, and then you get feedback. The most important thing is that what you do? you get the feedback. And then what you do, you improve yourself once you get feedback. Right? So you take that feedback you take that feedback constructively, you take that feedback positively, and what you do, you improve yourself. Fine? And once you go for any demonstration, you go for an interview, things would become easy for you. Whenever you go for language teaching, you go to a university, you go to a college, you go to a company. So if you know these stages of teaching language, so things would not be difficult for you. You can easily manage this activity because you know what are the stages of teaching a foreign language, right? An oral lesson particularly, right? So you know what do we do in the presentation stage, you know what do we do in the practice stage being teacher, you know how do we maneuver our production stage, right? You know how do we make lesson plans, and I have shown you 2 or 3 lesson plans, right? And you have seen those lesson plans, right? And you have seen elements of a lesson plan, right? So when you come for the micro teaching, you use that knowledge that you have gained, right? And that's of course mean micro teaching becomes a success for you, right? And you get marks for it. Fine? So because this is in fact a full-fledged, in fact, a workshop where that student becomes a teacher and he teaches students, right? And while this teaching, he comes to know, he in fact finds out his good points and of course his weak points, and of course he tries to maintain his good points, and that student tries to eliminate his weaknesses. So therefore micro teaching is very important, and we spend much time on it, and we saw that of course once you teach, you come to know your problems, weak areas, and you make strategies for improvement. Then why you teach is to learn, of course, because, and you also realize once you undergo micro teaching, you come to know that teaching is in fact learning. The teacher seeks more than the students, and that is quite natural. Fine? Because once you teach, and of course once you teach, you hold yourself accountable. And then you keep on asking yourself, either you are doing well or you need to put more efforts, because it is, in fact, you learn by doing. And I told you, in fact, that 90% learning is when you see, when you hear, and you do. And so is the case here. Right? Why? Because you see, you have undergone this full-fledged process of teaching. So once you do it, you learn faster, right? Your learning improves, right? Why? Because you put yourself in that teaching environment where you have the learners in front of you, you are in the classroom, you have realia with you, you have a lesson plan with you, and you teach. And of course one more important thing is that you teach in the presence of an evaluator. There is a supervisor. He sees you, he evaluates you, right? How does you start your teaching? So in this way, what happens? That, my dear students, you of course, you remain careful, right? If you are a professional teacher, then you see that, of course, you keep in mind the skills of micro teaching. Right? You keep in mind how to explain things. You keep in mind how to write on the board. You keep in mind how to get the feedback. So therefore, these all micro skills you try to incorporate, because you have talked about that, right? And that really improves your teaching process. And if you do it, we can say that learning would be better. So that's we talked about in the last 4 lectures, and we also saw that secret to education is to respect the pupil, right? Respecting your students is very important, right? So respect your learners and learning would be better. You would get respect, of course, learner would take more interest. So you will facilitate learner more if you give them respect, right? And classroom discipline would be maintained, in fact. There will not be any problem in the class if there is an element of respect there. If there is disrespect, there can be conflicts, there can be hatred in the class. So to obviate those things, to remove all these problems, what you can do, you have to give respect to your learners. This is what we talked about in our last lecture. Let's start today's lecture, that is integrating skills, right? So before we start, I have some questions for you. A non-credit quiz. First question, students, what's it? What is micro teaching? Who would tell me? Yes, teaching at micro level. What does it mean? Small number of group. Good. Then teaching a skill. Good. What else? Teaching for a for 10 minutes. Good. Right? So again, micro teaching. Right? And I told you initially that what is teaching? What are the defects in teaching? What is learning? What are defects in learning? You know that? Yes. So keep those things in mind. Then various stages for teaching an oral lesson. I'm that sure you know all these things. Yes, warm-up stage, presentation stage, practice stage, production stage. Good, good. Various skills of micro teaching. All right, blackboard writing. Fine. What else? Yes, explanation skills. Fine. What else? Yes, think of more skills of micro teaching. Classroom management. Okay, all right. So think of more micro skills of micro teaching. How to use teaching aids effectively? Yes, very important. That you need to know the teaching aids first of all, right? That whatever aid you are using in the class, you need to know what is it, how to use it, what are its advantages, what are its disadvantages, how can I use it effectively. For example, you are using OHP in the class. So you need to know how to write on OHP, or you get script copied on that overhead transparencies, right? So therefore, knowing teaching aids helps you, in fact, using them well. I hope you understand. So these are some the questions were there. You see, it was a non-credit quiz for you. I'm happy that you people, replied, you people answered well. It means that you are, in fact, revising things. It means when you come to your class, you do, in fact, have a look on your previous lectures. It's a very good thing, right? And this is the requirement for this course particularly. Other courses, of course, I'm sure you are doing well in other courses as well, like you did in the last semester. But again, for this course particularly, every lecture is linked with the next lecture. And I'm sure you must have realized that whenever I come, I try to summarize things. Right? So in this way, you jog your memories. You learn about things that we have done. Right? So in this way, you make yourself prepare. Right? You prepare yourself for the coming lecture. Is that clear? So this is what, my dear students, you see, it was a quiz for you, a non-credit. Let's start today. What? Integrating skills. Right? See, so we'll talk about, we'll follow Peter Lucantoni, in fact, right? We'll incorporate his views as well. That who is he, right? Started teaching in 1979 in UK, Amateur Education, University of Edinburgh, lived and worked in Europe and Middle East, now based in Cyprus. Then, of course, author, educational consultant, teacher trainer for Cambridge University Press. Then Cambridge TKT, right? Teaching knowledge. Is that clear? Teacher's knowledge of teaching, right? Then you have CLT, Celta While. What is this? Certificate in English Language Teaching to young learners. Y for young, alpha learners. Celta, Certificate in English Language Teaching to adults. Delta, Diploma in English Language Teaching to adults. A for adults, right? Celta, Delta, and what? Celtile, right? Celtile means Y for young alpha learners. And trainer in Cambridge, of course, Cambridge Celtile assessor. Also he assesses things. Examiner for Cambridge is all speaking examinations. And of course, TKT, teaching knowledge test. Certificate in English language test for young learners. right? So here, of course, Peter, Luke and Tony will in fact use his in fact the knowledge in this as a resource. So I thought I should talk about Peter, Luke and Tony. Alright, this is our overview. Fine, that what does integrated mean? Clear? What are the skills, language skills and sub-skills? What does integrating skills mean? How can we integrate language skills in the classroom? And conclusion. Clear? This is what mean overview that we'll talk about. Now, what does integrated mean? If I ask you, integration, right? So, skills are, and I mean, generally, of course, what happens when I talk and you listen, right? So, see, speaking and listening, and again you are writing, and you are responding again, of course. Clear? Or I write on the board, I write a sentence, you people read that sentence. Then you answer to that question if it is a question. So what is it? I mean, integration is there, right? So integration is there, of course. When you teach a skill, you cannot altogether put other skills aside. What you do, that you highlight one skill that you are teaching. For example, you are teaching reading skill, so you focus on reading. So you could say that reading is highlighted. Fine. Other skills are there. Other skills are there. Fine. So therefore the integration mean when you incorporate all the skills. Fine. So that is of course mean integration. If you see it here, when we integrate things, they combine or work together to make something more effective. Clear? So integration of skills. I mean, if you just focus on one skill, so only one skill would be sharpened. However, when you integrate, so result would be better. I mean, again, that when you combine more than one skills, so more results would be there in fact. An integrated system or organization combine different groups or ideas in a way that works well. That's why organization. What happens in an organization, of course, you have different departments. And there is a link between different departments. Finance department, HR department. Clear? IT department. Fine? So sales department. So of course there is a link between all these departments. So that's why if there is integration among departments, so organization would grow. If there is no integration, if departments are delinked, so of course organization cannot run, cannot survive. For the survival of an organization, my dear students, so what we need to do, we need to integrate the different systems. We need to integrate finance with HR, of course, because definitely finance needs support of HR. HR needs support of finance, in fact. So all departments need to be integrated. Similarly, skills, right? All the 4 skills, of course, need to be integrated. This is what integration mean, right? Again, of course, an example, the teeth on a zip fastener needs to combine in order for it to become effective. You see, there is another image there. Teeth of a zip, in fact, right? Need to combine, otherwise that zip is useless. Fine. Therefore, integration enhances productivity. Fine. Equally true is the language skills need to combine to be integrated in order for communication to become effective. I mean, it's very common thing that, I mean, I speak and you listen. I told you earlier. You speak and I listen. I ask question, you reply. Fine. Sometimes I say something and you people take notes. Writing is there. Then you read that. Again, if there is any confusion, you ask me that. So look at it. So again, when you talk about day-to-day communication, day-to-day conversation, so there is integration of skills. I hope you understand. I mean, so like speaking and listening, for example, reading and writing. Fine. So that's why we cannot say that, of course, only one skill is important, other skills are not important. So all 4 skills are important. They need to be integrated for successful communication. For good communication, my dear students, integration of skills is important. Right? I mean, that's why we call it that oral skills, what? Listening and speaking. And literary skills, what? Reading and writing. Fine? And again, effective communication, all four skills are important. You speak a message. Fine. You convey a message orally. Again, you do. You write that message. If you say something and it has not been recorded, it goes in the air. However, if you have written that message down, so now you have an evidence for it, that this is what I said, this is what I wrote. Is that clear? So this is what, my dear student, that of course, like I gave you examples, that of course for the effective communication, integration of skills is important. Now what are skills? Right? Try not to think about ELT. Discuss and try to agree on a definition. What is it? See the skill. The images are there. Clear? So of course, if you are an athlete, yes, you're bodybuilding. Of course, you practice and you skill. You are a goldsmith, you are a blacksmith, whoever you are. Fine? So of course, skill. Right? You are a teacher, teaching skills. Fine? You are a laborer, that is again skills. Fine? So again mean the ability to do something well needs to continue to be consolidated and practiced, or we can easily lose our skill. If you fail to practice a skill, or if you don't practice a skill, yes, chances are there that you would lose that skill. For example, recitation. If you recite the Holy Quran daily, in fact, so you sharpen that skill. And if you don't, after some time you will feel that you cannot even recite that. You forget that recitation. Is that clear? If you stop working with internet for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, yes, if you start again after 3 weeks, things would be hard for you. And if you don't do it for 6 months, I tell you, you might not recall things. Facebook, for example. Nowadays, people are very, very good at Facebook. Why? Because they use it on a regular basis. And if you don't use it for a week, for a month, you will see the difference. So skill needs what? Continuous practice. Right? If you don't, you can lose that skill. Clear, bache? You understand? Alright. So, if Rooney stopped practicing, would he continue to be a skilled footballer? No, never. If you play cricket, and if you play it regularly, yes, you would continue. If you don't, you cannot play that. Right? So, skill needs practicing. Right? And of course, regular practicing is of course important. And what about the pianist and carpenter? Whatever, in fact. If you are a pianist, if you are a carpenter, whatever your profession is. If you are a teacher, yes, you practice teaching skill. If you are a writer, if you don't practice writing, you cannot be a writer. I hope you understand. So this is very important point, my dear students, that practicing is important. Practice makes a person better. Right? Of course, if you practice recording, if you practice playing, if you practice listening, if you practice photocopying, if you practice printing, so obviously you improve that skill. But if you don't, things would be difficult for you. I hope you understand. Yes. So therefore, my dear students, that of course means if you are a pianist or you carpenter, you have to. Got my point? Yes. Again, people who have a skill demonstrate the ability to do something well. A skilled footballer scores goals. A skilled pianist plays well. A skilled carpenter makes beautiful furniture. Of course, you need to hone your skills. Is that clear? Right? I mean, of course, our context is the language skills. So, the message is that if you want to be a good writer, practice writing. Good speaker, practice speaking. You want to be a good reader, practice reading. Good listener, practice listening. Yeah. If you practice, you are better. If you don't practice, you are a loser. Very simple. Skills need practicing. And again, I would say continuous practicing. If you practice continuously, yes, you would be a successful person. If you don't, yes, things will be difficult. So, of course, my dear students, again, this teaching is a skill. Teaching a foreign language, again, it's a skill, right? So what you need to do, you practice skills. For example, CELTA, it's a certificate in English language testing. I mean, CELTA is a certificate in English language teaching to adults. Over there, in fact, in this course, what happened that they give you time, much time, that you teach for 80 hours. 80 hours, what there is a practice for teaching. Clear, students? So this is my dear student, that of course mean you need to practice teaching, right? Practice teaching a foreign language, right? Whatever your profession is, you practice, and naturally, of course, you improve, you hone, right? You are a travel agent, you practice that, making tickets, issuing tickets and all that. If you're a lawyer, every day you face different problems, you draft your cases, you draft your emails, and you become, of course, a skilled drafter. Is that clear? So we are not necessarily born with the skill to do something. Again, the point is that, of course, we come on this world and you learn things. It doesn't mean that we come with some skills, right? We come on this world to in fact have some skills. Usually skills are developed during life. Rooney the pianist and the carpenter all needed plenty of lessons and practice before they become skilled. Driving, for example. There was a time that of course you didn't know where is accelerator, where is brake, where is clutch, right? And you found it very hard to drive, of course. Even you found it hard to sit on the driving seat, right? I mean, you found it hard, of course, to move the steering wheel. You found it hard to see your wing mirrors, to back mirrors. But once you started doing it, and now you are comfortable. You do it unconsciously, right? You drive, you change gears, of course. You accelerate, you clutch, you brake, of course. While driving, you do unconsciously. Nobody tells you to do it. You know when to brake. You know when to turn left, when to turn right. You know the red signal you have to stop. You know green you have to move. You know which is the fastest line. You know which is slowest line. So which is the middle line. You keep these things in mind. Clear? So all these are the factors. Means the practice. Clear? So now language skills and sub-skills. Language skills, you know. Yes? What is it, my dear students? Have a look at these images. So, to be completely effective in language, we need to be competent in the skill of reading, writing, listening and speaking, as well as thinking about the language. It's very important, right? These are the skills of language, right? Input skills and output skills. You have what? Listening skill, and you have what? Reading skill. Similarly, output skills, fine, where you talk or you write. I hope you understand. So, being language teacher, being student of this course, you need to be completely effective, right? I'll be talking, of course, in the next lecture that how to teach speaking skills. We talked earlier in the last semester, just to give you another view, that how can you be successful speaking teachers. I mean, you may have plenty of opportunities for the spoken language teacher. Clear, students? So it's important to be completely effective in a language. We need to be what? Competent. We need to enhance, need to improve these 4 skills, because you will be the teacher of these skills. And if you are not competent in these skills, how will you teach? If you are not good listener, if you don't practice listening, if you're not good writer, if you don't practice writing, how will you be a teacher of these skills? Because you are going to be the role model. Clear? That's why you need to. Fine? Of course, find examples of the language skills discussed here, in fact. I hope you understand. Okay. Now these pictures, for example, there are some pictures. You can have a look, of course. Well, students, so we talk about these skills of language that you need to be good at, all these 4 skills, and also thinking skills. So there are some also sub-skills, right? So being skilled in a language necessitates also having good language sub-skills. right? Now, what are sub-skills, right? Why are sub-skills important, and when do we use them? Skills, and under those skills you have some sub-skills, like for example speaking skills. So when you speak, there is a sub-skill of that speaking is called pronunciation skill. So we need to know what are the main skills and what are the sub-skills of those essential skills of language. Now here, my dear students, look at here. People who use the language employ a number of sub-skills or strategies, right? Of course, you are going to be a teacher of this language. You will be teaching English as a foreign language. So you need to know what are the skills and what are their sub-skills, right? Sub-skills are chosen depending on the task to be completed. Is that clear? You need to know, right? You choose the sub-skills. Fine, considering the skills that you are teaching and considering your of course the task that you are going to complete, right? So here language sub-skills are there. If you have a look, right? So see sub-skills, example, language sub-skills. Now one is skimming, note-taking, for details, what? Presenting, analyzing. These are of course. When you talk about read, how to read, you can skim, you can scan. When you write, you take notes, sub-skill, right? Reading, I mean sometimes you scan for details. Clear? You presentation, again a sub-skill. Analyzing things, I hope you understand. The skills that come under the main skills, we call them sub-skills, right? I gave example of pronunciation. That comes under speaking skill. Skimming comes under reading. Scanning comes, of course, these are strategies of reading, but these are the sub-skills of reading. Well, students, so these are some images of the sub-skills that you know, right? So I hope you are clear about the skills and the sub-skills, right? And skills of language we're talking about, reading, writing, listening and speaking, and all the skills that come under these main skills, we call them sub-skills. Clear? Some more in fact. Skimming, why? Note-taking, why? For details, why? Presenting, why? See, analyzing, why? I hope you understand that why we skim. We skim to get details, or we skim to get important points. Skimming is the fast reading, right? So you skim to get cream. You skim to get most important points. Note taking, why? As an evidence, right? You take notes because you want to keep those things with you. For details, why? You want to, in fact, have maximum information. Clear? Again, why you present? To convey things, to show that you know much about that. Why you analyze? Maybe you analyze to make a decision. Maybe you analyze to reach a conclusion. Is that clear? So these are of course means when talking about the skills and sub-skills. And why these sub-skills? Talking about pronunciation. Why pronunciation? I hope you understand. That's what you see that. Now language sub-skills. A language learner's proficiency in the various sub-skills will be different, right? Furthermore, every learner needs in each sub-skill will be different from the next learner's need. I hope you understand, right? Learners' needs are different. Every learner has a different need. When you skim, maybe your need would be different. Ali's need would be different. Zia's needs would be different. When Zia skim, when Ali skim, when Azmat skims, in fact. So needs of the learner, they are different from learner to learner, right? So as far as sub-skills are concerned, when you in fact scan, why you scan things? When I scan, why do I scan? When I analyze, why do I analyze things? My analysis, the purpose of my analysis would be different. The purpose of your analysis would be different. So every learner has a different purpose. When he, in fact, considers sub-skills of a language. I hope you understand. So when you learn a language, your proficiency in the various sub-skills will be different. Of course, I mean, this analyzing things, every learner has a different, of course, capacity to analyze. Maybe Azmat would analyze things well because he has good analytical skills. Maybe Zia would in fact skim things well. Maybe he is good at skimming skills. So, of course, learner's proficiency varies from one learner to another. It varies from learner to learner. Similarly, when you present things, of course, why you present? Of course, maybe Ali's, his purpose of presentation is that he wants to be a good presenter. Of course, maybe Usman, his purpose would be just to express himself well. So this is what varies from the learner to learner, in fact. So language, of course, one of 4 roles as a teacher of E2, in fact, right, is to help learners to develop those skills and sub-skills which they are weak in, need for particular purpose. Also, we need to help them identify which sub-skills are most appropriate for a particular task. This is very important. Being teacher, we determine that presentation skills, of course, are very important when you have to make a presentation in your company. If you are teaching to the students of business administration, so when you teach speaking skills, so you must focus on the sub-skill, that is presentation skills. Clear? When you teach, of course, reading skills to the students of business administration, you must focus on analysis. You must focus on case study analysis. That course in the course of studies, these students would definitely analyze different case studies. Is that clear? You see, so this one is, of course, when you being teacher of these skills, you must know the sub-skills of the language and also the purpose of the learner of that sub-skill. Right? And again, if you are teaching students of engineering, their purpose, they have to work with the graphs. Right? So for them, how would they, in fact, explain those graphs, which language items they would need for it. So this is very important area, right? Being teachers, of course, of the foreign language, we need to consider, we need to keep in mind that, of course, this skill we are teaching, which sub-skills they need more. And it depends on the level. If you are teaching language, of course, to the students, they are there to improve their proficiency, improve their language only, then again you decide on. You are preparing IELTS students, for example, and you are preparing IELTS academic, or you are preparing students for IELTS journal. So you need to know which kind of questions would be there in the exam and which sub-skill would help them there. This is very important. Right? So therefore, my dear students, of course, when you teach these skills, you must know the sub-skills that they would need. And if you don't know what is a sub-skill, how would you incorporate those things? Then you cannot come up to the expectation of the learner. So learner's expectation must be considered. Like particularly when you teach, for example, business communication. So over there you need to know that why reading is focused, why writing is focused, and which documents should be considered when you teach writing skills. Is that clear? So that's why, my dear students, that when you teach language too, in fact, right, so you help learners to develop those skills and sub-skills which they are weak in, need for a particular purpose, you help them in identify which sub-skills are most appropriate for a particular task. Is that clear? So that's why this thing you should know, because, and this again, you must know the difference between a skill and a sub-skill. If you know it, then you can come up to the expectation. Then you can help your learners well. And then learners would be enjoying that. Well, students, so of course this means that the skills and the sub-skill you need to know being teacher of this language, and then you can help your learners accordingly. How many examples of sub-skills practice can you find? Right? I gave you example of pronunciation. I gave you example of skimming. I gave you example of scanning. I gave you example of analyzing, in fact, right? So, here's example: listening for gist, proofreading, of course, writing. Is that clear? Proofreading mean writing. Editing, again writing. Sub-skill, of course. Organizing, again writing. Exemplifications, both writing and speaking. Fine? Compare your list, some same or different. Every learner, when you listen, why do you listen? Maybe for information, right? For gist, for understanding, for questions, for knowledge. Clear? So of course, definitely when you compare your sub-skills, you would have different answers. I hope you understand. Alright, so learners need to be able to identify which sub-skills are required for a task and then to implement them. Clear? Outside the classroom, this happens automatically. People are able to select those sub-skills that are most important to their task. So here mean you being teachers of the skill, you need to understand. These days, of course, there are lots of schools of business are there, the school of economics and other subjects. They incorporate English as a complement, as a compulsory subject. And over there, if you have to teach communication skills, you have to teach reading skills, writing skills, you must consider which sub-skills are to be incorporated, right? Because the sub-skills that the student need, and being teacher, you must include those sub-skills in your course contents, right? Language learners need to be trained to identify and apply sub-skills and need practice and consolidation in the same way that Rooney does, the footballer, for example. Right? Skill shortage in the country. Wanted experienced rainmaker, for example. I hope you understand. So that's why, again, I would say that whatever skills, for example, if you are, like here example is that if you feel that, well, you are preparing students for a banking job, or you are in fact helping students for a sales job. So over there, which sub-skills you must include, you must in fact help learner. For somebody who is in a bank, for somebody who is in a hospital, if you are teaching in fact staff nurses, right? Or if you are teaching in fact factory plant employees, if you are teaching engineers, so you need to know which sub-skill. For example, generally of course engineers in the plant, so they have to draft, their drafting skills are important, right? So you need to include that sub-skill in the teaching. I hope you understand. So that's why, my dear students, skills and the sub-skills, being of course teacher of that sub-skill, you consider reviewing all these points. So talking about integrating skills, my dear students, if you know the skill and the sub-skill, right, and then you can easily integrate, fine, then integration would be easy for you. The learner must develop skills and strategies for using language to communicate meanings as effectively as possible. Who said this? Littlewood said. It's research. Fine, that if the learner, he has to develop what? Strategies for using language to communicate. Of course, language is for communication, right? So, and for this communication, definitely, he needs to know which skill he requires, which sub-skills he needs, right? And how he can integrate, of course, various skills. Fine? Alright, so language skills are integrated, they cooperate with each other. When skills are integrated, they cooperate. Fine? Of course, the sub-skills are incorporated, again they cooperate. Language users employ a combination of skills at the same time. Harmer says. Right? Lucantoni, of course, 2002, what he says that they are integrated because language skills cooperate. And of course, Harmer viewpoint is that language users employ a combination of skills at the same time. Right? And again, I would say, of course, skills and their sub-skills. When you talk, you work on your pronunciation. Is that clear? So again, a sub-skills. When you speak, of course, the accent. Of course, a sub-skill. Fine? Your sound, your voice. Again, when you write, what do you write? Is that clear? Which document you write? A memo, write a letter, write a report. So sub-skills are there. You have to integrate. Well, students, so talking about that, the confidence and independence need to be built and developed in using language in real situations. Clear? So when you talk in a real context, in a real situation, what happens? You build your confidence. Right? While language and grammar are important, of course, communicative skills should be our motto, should be our mission. Clear? See, when you teach language, of course, grammar is there. Right? Grammar is one element of language. Right? But see, you teach language for communication. Again, communicative language teaching. Right? If the learner is able to communicate his message, all right, the purpose of language is there. Right? Of course, the grammar is one element of the language. Right? That's why, of course, we see when you teach writing skills, so sub-skill can be your grammar skills. And of course, now what if I ask you, what is there in fact? Well, students, so a professional approach, in fact, of course, to language teaching and learning will help the teacher to focus on the specific areas of the learner where, of course, the learner is struggling. Clear? I mean, if you know that learner, of course, needs improvement in organization skills in writing, so you can help the learner improve his organization. If you feel that learner, of course, is weak in his spellings, so of course you would focus on the spellings, right? So in this way, if you feel that learner is struggling in sentence structure, you can work accordingly. All right. So dear students, talking about integrating skills, of course, when you have the confidence and independence, see, I talked about earlier, need to be developed. Well, students, so I have just talked about that, of course, you see, this integration is an important. Integration of skills is equally important. So what we do, and of course, an integrated approach to language teaching and learning will find room for what? For focusing on specific areas of language where necessary. For example, lexis, grammar, if the approach is integrated. And then we'll be able to focus on the sub-skills as well, considering our learners' need. What we do for it? We choose an authentic text and think of one of your classes for which you think the content and level would be appropriate. Right? Again, choosing text, authentic text, and considering it for a class. Right? And design an integrated skills lesson using the text and your ideas from the workshop. Right? Whatever. You see, you have, of course, you have heard about it, you have talked about it, you have learned about this integration of skills. So, you see, once you try to apply it, what do? You take a text, fine, and then you think over it and apply it as per the given situation. So, dear students, in this lesson, what we talked about in today's lecture of integration, that what does integrated mean? Right? So my dear students, what we do, that we discussed with lots of example, that integration is an important, in fact, phenomena, right? It's an important element, right, of particularly language teaching. What we do in this integration, that we integrate the skills, right? We integrate essential skills, and naturally, of course, we teach language for communication. We teach language, of course, for understanding. So that's why when we talk, when we integrate skills. When we read, we write, we have oral skills and we have written skills, right? So integration is there. And why we integrate? Because once you integrate skills, so communication would become more effective, right? When you talk and when you listen, you read and write, you integrate. And this integration helps you improve your what? We call them help you improve your skills, right? So integration, in fact, my dear students, help improve your communication. Integration, in fact, when you integrate, of course, you keep in mind the sub skills as well, right? So you know the skills are there. Skills, ability to do something, right? If you are a footballer, if you are a carpenter, if you are, of course, if you are a gardener, so your skills are there. And of course, if you don't practice those skills, you will lose those skills, right? Language skills, input and output skills are there. Reading skill, writing skills, speaking skill, of course, that is listening skills. And again, there are sub skills. And why we need sub skills? Because when you teach, my dear students, so you incorporate those sub skills as well, right? Of course, when you talk about speaking skills, pronunciation, talk about reading skills, under that you have skimming, you have scanning, in fact. And what does integrating skills mean? Again, right? When skills coordinate, cooperate for effective communication, for good speaking, fine, for effective listening, for active listening, for good writing, for active reading, fine. How can we integrate language skills in the classroom? This is important, right? That of course you can take a text, fine. Of course you can, for example, you can write on the board, right? And again, once you write on the board, of course you started with the writing skills. Then maybe students would read that text, fine. And of course, once they read, there is reading. And they would read, and of course, then they would incorporate their what? Signs, mean punctuation marks, in fact. Where to take pause, where to move on, fine. Where to take a pause, right? And then, of course, students might discuss on that. Again, speaking, of course. When you speak, of course, some more sub-skills of speaking, pronunciation, right? And other sub-skills, of course. And then maybe you will talk about that. So, integration of skills, my dear students, generally if you see that in every class, integration is there. We focus on the skills that we teach, like in micro-teaching, we talk that, you see, maybe we teach writing skills. But it doesn't mean that while teaching reading skills, we just read and read and read. We don't talk. Speaking is there as well, right? And of course, after reading, teacher might ask you to summarize it. Again, writing skill is there. Or teacher, while reading, teacher might ask you, okay, give your comments on that. So the purpose is, of course, to help you speak that language, help you write that language. So again, integration is there. We cannot ignore this, integration of skills, whatever skills you are teaching. Right? However, of course, mean that you see the skills that you are teaching, writing skills, then you focus on this, more on the sub skills of that main skills. Is that clear? So this is what I have to say in this lecture. In this next lecture, of course, we'll move on. So this was a lecture on integration of skills. I want you to read more about these skills, and particularly integration of skills. Read your handbook, and things would be easy for you. It's time to say goodbye.